Welcome to Gettysburg National Military Park. It's an honor to have you all here today on behalf of everyone at Gettysburg. Welcome to the battlefield on this, the 154th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg, the 154th anniversary of the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg. And it would be this afternoon, a century and a half ago, that the men of the 62nd Pennsylvania would enter into combat here, not far from where we're sitting and standing. So it's special to be here for that reason, to connect with that history. It's even more special that we're all here today because we have with us a unique artifact, one of the company flags of the 62nd Pennsylvania, long lost and only recently rediscovered and now conserved so that future generations of Pennsylvanians and Americans can appreciate its significance and its association with a storied regiment and with this battle. And I don't think it's overstating it to say that this is the most significant event to occur at the monument to the 62nd Pennsylvania since it was dedicated by the veterans of the regiment in 1889. So I think this is an important day. The men of the 62nd Pennsylvania hailed from all over the western and central part of the state. They were from Blair and Jefferson counties, Pittsburgh, Uniontown, Allegheny County, and elsewhere. They were farmers for the most part, though virtually every occupation could be found in their ranks. Mechanics and shopkeepers stood shoulder to shoulder with druggists, laborers, lawyers, physicians. The man who would command the regiment at Gettysburg, Lieutenant Colonel James Hill, was a carpenter by trade. They were different people. They had different families, different dreams, different hopes, different aspirations, but they were all connected. All of them were joined together by their willingness to defend the Union, to leave their loved ones behind, and face the dangers of the battlefield. And on the afternoon of July 2nd, 1863, the men of the 62nd Pennsylvania, after having initially fought the Stony Hill behind us, they were ordered along with their comrades in the 32nd Massachusetts and 4th Michigan to very close to this spot, this location in Farmer John Rose's wheat field. And they would be here as Confederate troops from Georgia and South Carolina would emerge from the woods behind you and from the woods behind me. The men of the 62nd Pennsylvania would cling to this position, though the tide of battle would quickly turn against them. As additional Confederate units entered the battlefield, and as hand-to-hand fighting encircled the men of the 62nd Pennsylvania, they were forced to give ground and eventually fall back. Of the 426 men that the 62nd brought into the wheat field, 175 would be casualties, including 28 men killed. Those men that survived the fighting in this wheat field and that would escape the battlefields of 1864 and 1865 unscathed would never forget this day, July 2nd, and they would never forget this place, the wheat field at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. They would return here, as I mentioned, in 1889 on the 11th day of September to dedicate this monument, to remember and commemorate their slain comrades, and to mark their position where they fought their last stand here at Gettysburg. This monument, though, the stone, is not their only monument. Safeguarded for generations, the flag that is here today, with the names of the battles and campaigns the regiment and the company took part in inscribed on it, has fortunately, miraculously, survived the ravages of time. And like this monument, it will hopefully serve to remind future generations of the sacrifices and the struggles of the Civil War generation, who on this battlefield and others gave their last full measure of devotion to the Union. The National Park Service and myself, we're honored to be with you here today. We're so thankful that you're all here on this battlefield. And it's an honor to see this flag brought back to the battlefield. And we're incredibly appreciative of the efforts of many organizations to make this happen. And we hope that this flag, now preserved, will continue to tell the story of what the 62nd Pennsylvania did here. So again, I welcome you, I thank you, and now I'd like to turn it over to Sam Dunkel, Post Commander of the American Legion Post 516 out of Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Good morning. It's a great morning. Greetings to all of you, and welcome to the Hollidaysburg American Legion Post 516 rededication ceremony for Company M, 62nd Infantry Regiment's battle flag. My name is Sam Dunkel, and I'm the commander of Post 516, but today I have the honor of being your master of ceremony. Our purpose here today is to pay tribute to the men who served in Company M, especially those who paid the ultimate sacrifice and gave their lives in the struggle. It is fitting that we remember the sacrifices made so many years ago, with today marking the 154th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. As we pause and assemble here at this monument that was dedicated to honor the men of the 62nd Infantry Regiment, let us truly be thankful and grateful to those who served and helped preserve the Union of the United States of America. Most importantly, we want to keep our American history in the hearts and minds of our citizens today and generations to come. I'd like to introduce our VIPs and those participating in the ceremony. Please stand and raise your hand as you are able to be recognized. First, our keynote speaker, Brigadier General Scott Perry, the Assistant Adjutant General for the Army, the Pennsylvania National Guard. Thank you, General, for being here. Bishop Michael Rhine, the Bishop of the Allegheny Center, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Mayor John Stoltz, the Mayor of Hollidaysburg. Dr. Robert Gilday, the Superintendent of the school system. Superintendent. You're super, Bob. Ms. Amy Dotson, a history teacher at the high school. The Holleran family. To my left, your right, the 62nd Infantry Regiment Color Guard. Singing the national anthem, End America, is Rebecca Culp, an alumnus from the high school. Leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance is Reagan Fitch. She just graduated from the high school. Playing taps for us is Kirk Eichenlob, a senior at the Hollidaysburg High School. Boy Scout, Eagle Scout candidate. Providing overwatch for us today is the 28th MP Company. We do have Daughters of the American Revolution, Adam Holiday chapter. Raise your hands, ladies. And my fellow officers for the American Legion Post 516. Please raise your hands. And all of you, thank you for coming. As a point of protocol and procedure, as we honor history, we ask that you stand as you are able, remain silent, and render proper honors by saluting or placing your hand over your heart as appropriate. When we post the colors, sing the national anthem, play taps, and retire the colors. I ask that you take your cues from me during the ceremony. In a minute, I will give the command to post the colors. As they draw closer, I will put those of us veterans and military to present arms. The rest of you should place your hand over your heart. The alumnus with us here today, Rebecca Culp, will come forward and sing the national anthem. And then I'll give the command to order arms. I'll ask you to remain standing through the invocation and through the Pledge of Allegiance. So you've been given your warning order. 62nd Infantry, Color Guard, post the colors! Present arms!
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the monsters singing there, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Order, arms! At this time, I'd like to introduce Bishop Michael Ryan to give the invocation. Of note, the bishop is a direct descendant of a Confederate soldier serving in the 26th North Carolina that somehow survived the day. Bishop.
Thank you, Sam. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Sam and I used to, when we realized we both had relatives at the battle, wasn't too long before we realized they were looking at each other most of the time. But it is good to be with you here today as we gather and as we remember. So let us turn our hearts to God in prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Gracious Jesus, be with us in this place. We thank you that you have kept us safe as we have traveled. We ask, Lord, that you will be amongst us as we remember those who served and sacrificed. Lord, we pray for that day when wars and rumors of wars will be no more. But until that day comes, O gracious God, protect all those who serve, protect us, and keep us always in your grace. In your holy and gracious name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Bishop. At this time, Reagan Fitch, a recent graduate of the high school and a committee member for restoring this flag, will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Reagan?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job, ladies. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. Now for our flag rededication. Over 156 years ago, the men of company were living normal, peaceful lives in Blair County. After the rebel forces fired on Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor on April the 12th, 1861, President Lincoln put out a call to arms to crush the rebellion and to preserve the Union. Over 125 men with the names like Murray, Potts, Mufti, Watkins, and Halloran answered the call to duty to become volunteer soldiers. These men willingly left their families, their homes, their way of life to become soldiers. They would embark in a journey unlike many others at the time as they went off to fight the Civil War, again as volunteer soldiers in the Army of the Potomac. The soldiers of Company M would see action in every major engagement in the Eastern Theater of War. The 7 Days Battle, Antietam, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, and of course, here at Gettysburg, just to name a few. President Lincoln gave his second inaugural address on Saturday, March 4th, 1865. Within a few weeks, victory would be achieved on the battlefield. Regrettably, Lincoln would be dead. that in his speech he gave us these words to remember. With malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right. As God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work that we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow, and for his orphans, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace amongst ourselves and all nations. President Lincoln was, of course, talking about finishing the Civil War and taking care of the veterans and their family members afterwards. Today, we uphold President Lincoln's mandate as we pay tribute and honor those who served and those who paid the ultimate sacrifice to keep our nation as one. After 154 years, we honor our service members from our hometown who answered the call to arms and served our great nation. Today we gather to rededicate Company M's battle flag and honor those brave men who served under her. At this time, I'd like to introduce some very special guests with us today. Timothy Breslin and Michael Holleran. Please come forward. These gentlemen are the direct descendants of Private Michael Holleran, who served in Company M, survived the war, and afterwards he was the original caretaker of the flag. And most noteworthy, it was Private Holleran who presented the flag on behalf of the 6 remaining Company M members to the borough of Hollidaysburg in 1905. These gentlemen will have the honor of unveiling the battle flag directly behind me and the replica. Gentlemen, the field is yours.
On behalf of our great-grandfather, Private Michael Holleran, and all the other men who served in Company M, 62nd Pennsylvania Infantry Regiment,
you present the preserved battle flag for rededication on this hallowed ground of
for the United States Army, Pennsylvania National Guard. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Management from Penn State University and a Master's in Science and Strategic Studies from the United States Army War College. He is a rated pilot in multiple rotary wing aircraft. He enlisted in the National Guard in 1980 and was commissioned through Officer Candidate School in 1984. He has held command assignments at the company, battalion, squadron, and brigade levels. He deployed with the 28th Infantry to Iraq from 2009 to 2010, successfully flying 44 combat missions. Hooah! Gentlemen. He has also served as the Assistant Division Commander for support for the 28th Infantry Division. He has been awarded the Bronze Star Medal and many other awards and decorations too lengthy to list today. In addition, the General has a civilian occupation. He is the U.S. Representative to Congress from the Pennsylvania 4th Congressional District, which includes this battlefield, the town of Gettysburg, and the surrounding communities. General, it is an honor to have you here as our keynote speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the General.
Good morning. Good morning. On behalf of Brigadier General Tony Corelli, the Adjutant General of Pennsylvania, and the soldiers and airmen of the Pennsylvania National Guard, I am honored to be with you today as we rededicate Company M's battle flag and pay tribute to the soldiers who served under her. Company M, as you have heard, was an all-volunteer unit from Blair County in central Pennsylvania. Those men willingly left their families and homes to answer President Lincoln's call to arms to preserve the Union. As you heard, Company M fought in some of the most significant engagements of the Civil War. Of note was their service here at Gettysburg in this very location known as the wheat field. And I'm just going to depart from this a little bit.
and ask you to just think about it for a moment, to breathe it in. That's what this is all about, to remember that moment. None of us were there, but it's important to try and place ourselves there. If you're uncomfortable, if you're a little thirsty, if you're a little hot, think about marching to this place in conditions hotter than it is, more humid than it is, wearing your wool uniform, carrying all your military equipment, and jumping right into the fight. Think about the sounds, the words from your comrades in arms next to you, the screams from the enemy. Think about the smells of cordite and gunpowder, the things, the unspeakable things that your eyes will have seen during the course of this day. Think about engaging in a desperate struggle for life, where the sweat of the enemy, no matter which side you're on, is going to touch you. Their breath is going to be your breath. Think about that and what happened right here. It is truly phenomenal. It is amazing. It is important that we understand the cost of freedom, that we never forget. These people were volunteers who left home to fight for their country, for the other man standing right next to them. The 62nd Regiment was engaged in some of the fiercest hand-to-hand fighting on the battlefield. Words like uncommon valor, selfless service, and heroism often describe their actions here on the fateful day in July of 1863. You've heard, these colors never run, in reference to our American flag and the service members who defend her. I assure you that 154 years ago today, this flag and the men of Company M did the same. They held their lines and they stood their grounds courageously. On that fateful day, most historians make a case that the outcome of the battle and the fate of the nation that we live in and love, rested in their very hands of these volunteers, of this regiment, when willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for our country and their fellow brothers in arms. Their actions literally helped stem the Confederate advance and decide the outcome of the second day of battle. As a footnote of history, and to mark the significance of the fighting that day during the Battle of Gettysburg, the Union forces sustained over 8,750 casualties, and the Confederates over 6,500 in the area known as the wheat field. Just imagine that amount of people standing here, let alone injured or killed here. It's almost unspeakable to us, and I think it's hard for us to recognize and conceptualize the scale. We're forever grateful for their service, their valor, their patriotism in repelling the rebel army. As a result of the volunteers' efforts that day and the remaining days of the Civil War, the Union was preserved. The Union was preserved, and we reunited to become the greatest nation on the planet. Now, as we take a moment to remember and honor our past, we need to be mindful of the present and look to our future. As Americans, the enemy we face today is far different from the Civil War era. Today, we have enemies that are both foreign and domestic. Whether terrorist organizations like ISIS, homegrown terrorists, or nation-state forces and foes, we need to be strong and vigilant, just as these men were, about deterring our enemies on or off the battlefield. As a member of the Pennsylvania National Guard, I am proud that part of our mission is to protect and defend our homeland, in keeping with the tradition of the volunteers and citizen soldier who answered President Lincoln's call to arms to save our Union. Our Pennsylvania National Guard is an all-volunteer force of about 20,000 citizen soldiers and airmen across Pennsylvania. Like the soldiers of Company M, we're ready. We are willing to go into harm's way to protect our great nation at home and abroad.